Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Lieutenant Colonel Walter Tony Grady, United States Air Force retired, running for Lieutenant Governor. Here for the whole show on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Early in the morning or throughout the night, professional truck drivers are on the job, serving you, safely moving freight that's crucial to our economy. From the oldest industries to our newest innovators, from the exotic to the everyday, trucks are everywhere, moving everything. Never afraid to embrace a future that makes Nevada and our nation stronger. Trucking moves America forward.
Nevada Newsmakers Studio is located at the headquarters of the Nevada Trucking Association. Motion and purpose are a truck's greatest virtue.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're delighted to welcome to the program Lieutenant Colonel Tony Grady, U.S. Air Force retired. Pleasure to have you on the program, sir.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Sam.
Just reading your bio, whether you were running for office or not, it wouldn't matter. I'd really want to talk to you anyway. You're running as a Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Correct?
Yes, Sam, I am.
I want to make sure we got that right.
No, yes, Sam, I am. My wife and I fell in love with Nevada, and the people are so nice, and we really enjoy it. And I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because I think that I can do a great job for Nevada, and I think there's some things that I'm very passionate about. I'm sure we'll talk about them, but education is one of them.
All right. Well, let's start with the question I ask most people that are running for office or running for a high office, a constitutional office. But have you ever run for office before?
I have not.
Okay, so why pick Lieutenant Governor rather than running for Assembly, Senate, City Council, Planning Commission? Why go for a top job? Because even though the Lieutenant Governor is not a powerful position initially, sadly, if something happened to the governor, the Lieutenant Governor would be the governor.
Right.
So why run for the top job right off the bat?
Leadership, and when we look at what the responsibilities of the Lieutenant Governor are: tourism, transportation, economic development, government audit, continuation of government in the event of a disaster or problem. Those all are tied together by leadership. And especially in the tourism and economic development portion of it, though I'm a military man, I'm a closet entrepreneur. I've done a lot of things with businesses in terms of watching how they grow. Though I was in the Air Force, after the Air Force, I spent 20 years at FedEx, which is an international business. So I am not a politician, but I am definitely a leader from the things that I've done, and I wanted to bring those leadership qualities to a place where I thought I could really benefit the state. I think I can benefit it better as a lieutenant governor than if I ran for the assembly or another position.
All right. So let's go back in time a bit.
Okay.
Test pilot.
Yes.
That's a pretty amazing job, my friend. I had the honor of interviewing Jim Lovell amongst other astronauts.
Yes.
And test pilots and astronauts have an awful lot in common, I would say. Would you agree?
Well, if you look at the pilot astronauts, they're all graduates of a test pilot school, of which there are 4. But anyway, they're all graduates.
So one of the things that I admire, and I learned this from Jim Lovell,
Yes.
was that in the times of crisis, emotion is thrown out the door. That's part of your training, is that any time spent emotionally in a crisis is taking away from time of resolving the situation. For example, with Apollo 13, when they needed that burn to get back to Earth, even though the film made it a couple of minutes, it was actually about 30 seconds in real life where decisions had to be made. Have you ever been in situations like that where you had to just put emotion to the side and deal with a critical situation?
Yes, there have been times. I can probably think of them. But the most important thing I want to address in what you said is that what you're talking about is compartmentalization. So all pilots are trained in a certain way to be able to take in a lot of data and then to synthesize it and then to respond. So especially when you're in the test world and you come up against problems that are new, and it's going to be new for you when you're faced with it, you have to take your emotions and compartmentalize them because you need to think clearly. So we're trained that way. I think the difference with test pilots that become astronauts and do other things is the fact that you spend so much time training. So when you're faced with those problems, you start from an idea of analyzing what you need to do. There's the pilot adage, aviate, navigate, communicate. I would say with the test pilots, there's a lot of things in that aviation that we do. So you're right. I think that, I'm trying to think back, I've had so many close calls in an airplane.
Well, and that's why people are called test pilots.
So many close calls. But one of the things about the test pilot profession is that you spend a lot of time preparing, just like the astronauts prepare. I think the movie Apollo 13 really illustrated how important simulation is. And so from practicing in simulation, then when they were actually faced with the problem, they were able to handle it because A, they had a great team, but that process of how you analyze things. So, yes.
How do you apply that to government? Because we've seen, I mean, obviously on the federal level, national security advisors, people like that, come from the military side.
Right.
How does that apply in state government beyond the National Guard and other duties like that?
Well, it's really interesting that people tend to look at pilots as a pilot or somebody in the military as a military. But as a test pilot, you really have to interface with industry. You have to understand the folks that build the airplane. And the position that I was in, commanding the B-2 stealth bomber test squadron, we had to work with Northrop. We had to work with all their subcontractors. We had to understand costs, schedule, and performance. Our responsibility was to make sure that the airplane achieved performance and met its requirements. But in doing that, you have to understand how the businesses operate. I've also been trained at the Defense Systems Management College. And I actually, after that, was certified as a professional program manager. So I can manage programs, and that's easy. I shouldn't say easy, but I would say it's not something that's foreign because I understand it. But in being a test pilot, when you're working with the contractor, you have to understand how the contract is written, what the requirements are, what the scope of that contract is when you're trying to solve problems. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scene. One of the funny things we say in the test pilot community is you can't take off until the weight of the paper is twice the weight of the airplane. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes.
Okay, so I'm hearing my audience behind me going, okay, so cost overruns, I mean,
Yes.
are endemic in,
Yes.
in the military. You know, when you look at that and you look at government on any level,
Yes.
the public is in a panic right there. So how do you allay the fears that you're going to move from being a test pilot and dealing with Grumman and Northrop and all these other huge corporations and the billions of dollars of cost overruns?
Yes, well, if we look back to the U-2 and the SR-71 program, they came in, U-2 came in under budget, so it can be done. I've also
Yeah, but that's a long time ago now.
well, but and I'm going to get to that. I've also worked in the Pentagon as the director of the Long Range Attack Group that was in the Pentagon, and I was responsible for the portion of the Air Force budget that dealt with bombers. So I had to interface with Congress. And the problem comes, people kind of try to look at it narrowly. It's not a problem of cost overruns because of the military. It's a problem of cost overruns because of the way we program things. So as an example of that, with the B-2, we were supposed to get 130. We ended up with 21. So when you design an airplane, it takes a long cycle time. And when the contractor designs it and the contract is let for 130, he plans for that. But unfortunately, with our political system, on the whim, and it's actually not a whim, but it's the way the political process works, they can cut the buy. That sends tremors through that whole process. So to create an airplane like a B-2 takes a lot of research and development over many years. When you break down all the component parts, there are many subcontractors that are below that. So when you cut the buy, that affects them. And so a lot of the cost overruns come because of that. They come because of fits and starts or delays. So when you go back a long time to the U-2, there weren't as many perturbations to a test program. Today there are millions. Each session of Congress, or even in a year, they may decide to change things. One of the things that happened with the B-2 is after they decide to cut the buy, a few years later, they meaning the whole political process in terms of our congressmen and with the Pentagon and everybody, they said, well, what would happen if we started up the program again to get some more? Well, by that time, all the subcontractors have gone away and that sort of thing. So one of the things that I think that I can bring to that process is an understanding of what happens when you have a long-range vision and then all of a sudden you try to cut it. If there are chances that you are trying to start a program, say on the civilian side in something that I'm very passionate about, I have some ideas about how we can help our water problem here in Nevada, which affects our economic growth. If you plan a program that's going to take 3 years, if you all of a sudden say, no, we're only going to do it for 1 year or 2 years, that causes tremors. So I think what I can bring to the process is when we're planning certain things that would help stop cost overruns, things that would make it run smoother. So when you get back to the military problem with billions of dollars and things like that, there are just so many players that when they perturb that system, that's what causes the cost overrun. It's not because people aren't thinking through it. It's really the execution of it and how it falls out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Do you understand that?
Let's take a break. We'll come right back. I got a couple of current affairs questions, and then we'll get to more on your run for Lieutenant Governor. We'll be right back.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and Twitter. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Modern boutique Ahern Hotel and Events Center in Las Vegas. Host meetings and events on 2 floors. Stay in luxurious rooms and suites. Unlimited branding opportunities. Regional Italian cuisine by Chef Mark Segrisi. Flexible event spaces. Full buyout options. Visit ahernhotel.com today.
I'm Jeff Gehrman, an investigative reporter with the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I'm your guide for Season 2 of Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas.
You're in with every gangster and hoodlum in the United States. I don't go for that, Mr. Kennedy. I don't go for that kind of action.
I was on television accused of fronting for the mob.
Subscribe to Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, Season 2, today on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Before the masks, before the distancing, before the world changed, UMC was ready. Our response to COVID-19 began before the crisis did, with our own team of infectious disease experts who've spent their careers planning for this moment. With a pandemic response plan, we'd practiced again and again, and by blazing new trails in large-scale testing, including every patient we admit. Always ready. UMC.
7 at 7 is available anytime, anywhere.
I'm Riley Smith with your Vegas Golden Knights. Watch 7 minutes of nonstop news from the Las Vegas Review-Journal.
Streaming on LVRJ.com and YouTube. Powered by the Las Vegas Review-Journal. This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Grady, United States Air Force retired, running for Lieutenant Governor. I did want to ask you a couple of military questions. One, if President Trump had still been in office,
yes,
we would have pulled out of Afghanistan.
Yes.
Joe Biden did it as president. I think that the shock to me was that we had read in the media for so long, we have 3,500 soldiers there, we have 2,500 soldiers there. But in reality, what it turned out to be was probably around 300,000 people that needed to be evacuated, from military, contractors, people working with the contractors, translators, embassy staff, and on and on.
Yes.
Did it surprise you that the number was that great? And what should America take from that?
Excellent question. I think that you have to open your scope, that when you look at numbers, you have to know what you're talking about. You've mentioned the numbers of the entire effort. And when you're prosecuting any type of operation, especially a conflict like Afghanistan, it's kind of like an iceberg. So the part you see above the water is a third, or I should say a fraction, of what's below the water.
It's a great analogy, by the way.
So when our country goes and executes something like that, there's much more support. So that number doesn't surprise me. What is probably sad is that it's not very well communicated to the population at large how much it takes to execute an effort like that.
Okay, so do you think that it is wrong for the government to have a project that huge and, in reality, not really communicate that to the public? When we're hearing about 3,500 soldiers, people think, well, it's a small number, it's not that big of a deal. We want to support the military, but then suddenly you turn that number around. I mean, it almost seems like, the cover-up of the Vietnam War,
yes,
from president to president, that was revealed in the Pentagon Papers.
Yes.
It's analogous to what happened in Afghanistan towards the end is that we really had no idea how involved we were. And president after president, doesn't matter what party, it was all different parties, were essentially not telling the truth to the American public about what our true involvement was.
I think you've hit on another reason why I'm running. Because I think that in terms of leadership and in terms of the political process, there needs to be more transparency. That word's overused. Let's just say there needs to be the truth. And so part of the problem in terms of the question that you're asking, and this relates to what a lot of people don't really know or think about with our military, and that's that our military in the United States is unique in that it's not a separate entity. It's our sons and daughters. I have 4 children, 2 of mine are in the military, so it belongs to us. So I think that the politicians, understanding that, want to try to communicate that it's a small footprint or it's a small effort because it's our sons and daughters. I don't think that there's an intention to mislead, but I do think it is the responsibility of the leaders to communicate when we're going into another country or when we're using our military. They should communicate what that support effort is.
Well, that's a sin of omission. Let's take another break
Yes.
and we'll be right back. I'm here at the Carson Valley Inn in Minden with Joey Whitaker. Entertainment here at the Carson Valley Inn is extraordinary.
Yeah, super proud of the TJ's Corral, our outdoor venue, about 1,500 seats. We've had first-class entertainment out there. We've had Merle Haggard, we've had Chris Young, we've had Lee Bryce a couple times, we've had Pat Benatar, Joan Jett, who's in the Hall of Fame. We're real proud out there, and it's just a great time. Watch CarsonValleyInn.com and grab those tickets early. It's not a long way to get away to the Carson Valley Inn.
I'm men's rights attorney Marilyn York, and because I represent men in all family law matters, women often call me gender traitor, woman hater, and even disgusting. So why represent men and target myself with these offensive monikers? It's simple. Children with fathers in their lives are 6 times less likely to drop out of school, 15 times less likely to go to prison, and 5 times less likely to commit suicide. So ladies, you can hate me, but please love your children more than you hate their fathers.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
I'm back on Nevada Newsmakers. It's kind of an introductory session here for Lieutenant Colonel Tony Grady, United States Air Force retired, running for Lieutenant Governor. I just want to touch on briefly, you were also involved in the biotechnology industry for a while.
Yes, I was.
Quick version of what happened there, because we're running out of time.
Well, the real quick version is that when I was in school, I was at the Air Force Academy. It was an internal war as to major in life sciences, non-pre-med, or astronautical engineering. I took astronautical engineering. But what happened was I discovered that there was a company given in imaging that created a pill that you swallow that images your insides.
Oh, wow.
And instead of having an endoscope put down or even so what they were having a problem with is when the pill would go from the small intestine to the large intestine, it would tumble. Well, in my astro training, I was a controls major. And what that means is how you cause rocket motors to make them stable it's also the same as stability and control in an airplane. So it can control the movement of objects. And I sat there and I looked at that and I go, I can come up with a solution. And so that was in parallel with finding out about the field of nanotechnology.
Okay, and were you able to accomplish that goal?
What happened was we didn't quite make it to prototype because the Japanese beat us in our design.
Okay. So. Well, that's one TV show I wouldn't want to be on, to be quite honest with you. Okay, last question here.
Sure.
So, vast array of candidates for
Yes.
governor right now.
Yes.
Anybody that you would like to align yourself with, that you would hope that they would come out of the primary as governor so you could run with them?
No. And the reason being is that I think that the responsibility is for the people to decide who they want to be the governor. I can tell you this, whoever the people decide, I will be able to run with that person and I will be the best right-hand man they've ever had.
It's a pleasure to meet you. I heard great things about you before I got to meet you. I read your bio. It's stunning and people should go online and read that. Good luck in your race and on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
But either way, I'd love to have you come back and talk about more military things as well.
I would like to do that, Sam. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, and we'll be right back. Brian Culpa Photography was born in the rolling hills of Massachusetts, and now he can help you experience the stunning beauty of Nevada in a whole new way through the power of flight. Flying has always been a passion for Brian, and at Brian Culpa Photography, he can make your imagination soar. Brian has the creative mind and tools to tell your unique story. Experience the bird's eye view at brianculpaphotography.com.
Hi, my name's Marilyn Miner, and I'm sure you'd agree that Nevada's a very special place to live. I was born here, and my husband and I have raised our family here. I feel it's a privilege to live and work in the Truckee Meadows. I especially enjoy helping my clients reach their real estate goals. Sometimes the smallest details provide the greatest satisfaction. I'd be complimented to talk to you about your next move.
Call Marilyn Miner at Dixon Realty, 742-1280, or log on to marilynminer.com.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions, and all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Pro Group Management is the place where companies can find workers' comp solutions that are designed to meet their specific business requirements. As regulations evolve, Pro Group takes a proactive approach to clear the path to make sure your business stays ahead of the curve. Knowing your workers' comp program is optimized, you can focus on other important matters related to your growing business. Pro Group Management, workers' comp that works for you.
Don't forget, another way of watching Nevada Newsmakers is to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Nevada Newsmakers on YouTube. We'll see you on the next broadcast.